So one of the biggest challenges for an independent filmmaker is not only making the film, that's tough enough, but it's getting it distributed, getting it onto a screen. That world is rapidly changing. And joining me on the podcast today is a St. Louis filmmaker, Bruce Carlton Cunningham Jr. Welcome, Bruce.
How you doing?
Good. I'm glad you're going to be with us because you're going to help us figure a little bit about this world of distribution. Stick around. Hey there, welcome to the Screen Lawyer Podcast. I'm Pete Salsich, the Screen Lawyer. And joining me today is St. Louis filmmaker Bruce Carlton Cunningham Jr. Hello, Bruce.
How you doing?
Good. Welcome to the podcast. Glad you're here.
Good to be here.
It's going to be, I'm really interested in talking to you and to lay a little bit of the foundation. So, Bruce, you've been a filmmaker for more than 20 years in St. Louis. Is that right?
That's correct.
And tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started and where you are these days in your career.
I was a couch potato back in the 80s, watching a lot of the 80s films. Like I said previously, two of my favorite films got me into filmmaking. So it first started off as acting. I wanted to be an actor, and then later wanted to create those worlds that I've seen in these movies. So that's basically how I got started. And so, taking acting classes in high school and actually going to college and majoring in film and video production and with a minor in theater to help further that career along.
Got it. And so did you do most of your work early on as an actor?
Starting off as an actor, when I got to college, I was more behind the scenes. We had to make our own projects, our own film projects. So
Right.
I wasn't acting in it, mostly producing it. And then after college, was doing mostly both producing and acting, and a lot of the church productions I was in, theatrical, and a lot of shorts that I did.
Got it.
And then after that period, I started getting into more acting where I can get in, and then later just starting to produce my own film.
And so I think that's a path, a lot of people that I talk to in the production world really are, you hear the phrase multi-hyphenate, writer, producer, director, actor. When you're sort of putting these things together, you've got a vision, and sometimes you have to play or you have to do multiple roles, right? Not just play an actor, but maybe do the writing, assemble the team, find the locations, all of that aspects.
Get the food.
Right, exactly.
Get the food, yeah. Continuity pictures, yeah. Starting off, especially in the indies, unless you have rich uncle, or you come by a lot of money, or Hollywood's backing you up, you will be doing everything.
Yeah, no, that's true. You said about the food. If you don't feed the crew, they will not show up the next day, will they?
No, cast and crew.
Right, that's true. That's true. Well, and so and I guess in that process, you really develop a feel for how to build a budget, right? You have to put together all of these things. How many shoot days you have. What's your post-production look like? All of those different aspects. How much you're going to have to pay your crew and your cast.
A lot of the business side of filmmaking, most definitely, when you have to create that budget, making sure all them line items are there.
Right.
And then seeing what you can actually come up with and what you can come up with, and then how you're going to proceed forward with what you don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things and you make a good point because, if you had that rich uncle or aunt or the Hollywood production, budget behind you, then sure. But if you don't, you really have to sometimes make some hard choices about what you can do with the budget that you do have.
When I did Unresolved, starting off, it was very unorthodox because, we didn't have a lot of money. And I had to do a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, tell us about that. Let's before we get into the process, first tell us about Unresolved. What is the story there? Because that's now, and people can go watch that right now, correct?
Right.
You can watch it on Tubi or you can watch it on Amazon.
Right. Yeah, those two platforms.
Tell us about the movie.
Basically about a guy who's he just being released from prison,
Hmm.
who's trying to make up the lost time with his youngest daughter who's terminally ill, and reconnect with his oldest daughter who's befriended an enemy from his past.
Did you write? Are you the writer, sole writer,
Yeah, soul writer.
and
So
director
yeah,
and
yeah,
producer?
those many hats.
Yeah,
Those
and you're the lead actor in the film, correct?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So what was that like? How long did it take you to from beginning to end to get it from when you started to getting it onto a screen?
Which screen you talking about? Theater screen
Well,
or
and that's,
screen?
you know what, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that, because one of the things that we focus on here a lot on the Screen Lawyer podcast is this idea that, screens are everywhere, right? And
Right.
so you can watch it, used to be if you wanted to go to a movie, you pretty much had to go to a theater or
Mhm.
maybe wait for it to show up on late night TV, right? And then we got into Blockbuster and you can go buy videos, and now it's streaming platforms and everything. You can watch it on your phone. But it's still got to get from that point where it's just on, your screens while you're editing to the
Mhm.
point where other people can watch it on their screen. So when I say get it onto the screen, that's what I mean. Any place that somebody else can go watch it.
Okay, so I guess when I finished, then after the film festival route,
Sure.
decided to do a theatrical run here in St. Louis. I
Okay.
didn't have the means to do a nationwide because that requires a lot of marketing capital, and
Right.
which is one of the things I learned in raising the budget. Part of that budget you need a marketing.
Yeah.
A big percentage of that money you raise should go towards marketing. Didn't know that,
Right.
but
Right.
so all I can afford was do one here in St. Louis, and I got it to the two theaters, the Galleria and the MX Theater.
How was that process? Did you have to did you pay the theaters or did they pay you? Tell us about that process of getting your film into the two theaters here in St. Louis.
Yeah, so first you have to talk to them because it's not like the normal. I want to rent a theater out and have people pay for tickets to come in for one night. It's
Right.
not. I am actually. I didn't know the words at the time, but I'm distributing it to your theaters for public release, and people just like the studio films that you all have. I want my movie to be open. People can pay a ticket and come watch it. I had to
Right.
specify that because everybody will give me their rates of how to rent it and whatnot. I'm like, no, that's not what I want.
Right.
Yeah. And so I had to spell that out. And then when I spelled it out, oh, okay, this is the deal. This is how we do it. And you pay I forgot the term, but you pay sort of like a deposit.
Right.
And then depending on how much you make from the ticket sales,
Right.
oh, you get, you get it back. And then we split the profit with the theater 50-50.
Got it. Okay.
So it's like a retainer fee.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. And so how long was the film in those two theaters?
So 1 week at the Galleria, 2 weeks at the MX.
Okay. And that's really all you need to be considered a theatrical release, right?
Right.
As long as you have that. And so then what was the next step after that?
The next step after that was now it's time to release it to streaming. And so I had to at that point I was looking to see who would be a good fit for it as a distributor.
Right.
Because the networks, me, Andy, we're nobodies. And not saying we're nobodies, but we don't know you.
Sure.
And so
yeah.
the network is not talking to you if
Right.
we don't know you. You have to go through somebody we have a relationship with.
Right.
So basically how it goes. Unless you have a Denzel Washington in your film, or
Right.
Angela Bassett, or Brad Pitt, and then you go, oh, okay.
Right.
But
Right.
most, they want you to go through a distributor. So as an indie filmmaker, finding a distributor that's trustworthy, because I'm sure you heard the horror stories of how there are a lot of predatory distributors out there.
Yeah.
And so even when I was going through the film festival route and the theatrical route, I was doing a lot of research about distribution in 2023, 2024, because, the industry has changed.
Right.
It changed.
Right.
before COVID, it changed during COVID, and even now as we speaking, it's continuing to change.
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely. And so and you're right about the it's a good word, predatory distributors. They just because they pop up and there's some filmmakers that you don't really know any better, and somebody says, oh, I'm a distributor, I can make you an offer, and you end up signing some exclusive relationship with them, and then they don't do the work, or they don't, they're not properly accounting for where it shows, or you're just one of, basically they're taking money from you up front and that's it. Never do any work for you. So did you find a distributor that you trusted, or did you decide you ultimately kind of had to do it on your own?
I found a distributor. A lot of research I had to go because starting off, I had to, make sure that all my chain of custody was
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Intact. So making sure I had all the rights, even before the film festival, making sure
right.
I had all the rights, I had all my, releases and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because you got to have this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where we come in a lot of times. I mean, I've had situations where you first, independent filmmaker, has made a film, a number of years earlier, and finally has the opportunity maybe to get that first distribution agreement, and then they get that deal, and the exhibit B or C or whatever at the end is all the things that you need to provide them. So all of your contracts, all of your releases, all that stuff. And if they didn't get them at the time, it can literally kill the project. So good for you for having all those things.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I was at one of your last classes, and then you told the story about the guy who came and then he had to go back and get all the stuff signed because time had went past, but you need all these. I had to do the same thing because I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know. And some people I missed. So I had to go back, praying that, relationship's still cool.
Right.
I got all, long story short, I got everything signed.
Good. Well, and that you must not have been a complete impossible person to work with because they didn't walk away from you and say, no, forget it. So that's good. So yeah, like when you said, when you're in that producer role, you said before, you got to make sure that you've got food for the crew and the cast and everything, but you also have to make sure everybody has signed their contracts. Right? And everybody has all of those different steps and releases or locations or music licensing, whatever it is that is in that final cut. So you got a distributor, and then how did you get into the streaming process? Did you go to Tubi first, or how did that happen?
It was basically with the distributor, the one I went with. They basically what they told us, there's no guarantee you're gonna get on certain platforms, but they gave you a list of platforms that they do have a lot of their content on. And so with my deal, it was like, we're gonna shoot it out there. But the top two were Amazon Prime and Tubi.
Okay.
And so that's how we got that. And so that's one of the two of the most popular ones out there, aside from Netflix, Hulu, and the other ones. But a lot of indie products, for a lot of indie projects, those are popular, and so that's how I got. But the distributor had the relationship with those streaming networks.
So, so did you? And by the way, I should have asked you, what's the name of the distributor that you went with?
Indie Rights.
Indie Rights. Okay, and you've had a good relationship with them.
So far so good. I heard a lot of good stories. I reached out to other filmmakers who they did business with, and 9 times out of 10, the word was 2 thumbs up. So
good.
I kind of went with them. So because I had a few distributors on my list. So, but we talked, and I had to, according to the research, I had to make sure everything was matching, and then you're not matching, then no thanks. So because this is like a long-term deal, and based off what I've heard and what I've heard other filmmakers experience, I didn't want that for myself in this project.
Right. No, that's good. I mean, if you found somebody, like you said, doing your research, that's very important. And not your criteria might have been different than somebody else's, right? But whatever is necessary or important for you, it is a really important part of that process, because it can kind of feel like speed dating a little bit, right? You get a bunch of people say, "Oh no, I can do it," and so you got to get comfortable, because it is a relationship. You are counting on them to do their piece to get your film out there, and then to properly account to you for the proceeds that you're supposed to get.
Mm-hmm.
So how long has the film been on? Did it go on Tubi first, or did it go to Tubi and Amazon at the same time? How did that work?
It was released, and that's the tricky part, because once the distributor gives the networks your content, they put it up, whenever they like. And so I've heard people going up immediately. I heard people going up a little later, months, depending on the distributor. Mine went up on Tubi first, then a month later it went on Amazon.
Okay.
So I had to roll with those punches, and that was back in February. So
okay.
It's been up 7 months now.
And how does it, can you kind of explain how the Tubi process works? Like how do the revenues flow to you? Because I heard you and I met a couple times. Like you said, you came to one of the master classes we put on, and kind of have gotten to know each other a little bit about that. But then your name came up in a conversation I had not too long ago with Emmett Williams, who was a guest here on the podcast with Cinema St. Louis, and he was talking about how you have used social media so powerfully to drive people to the film. And so tell us a little bit about that process and how it works with Tubi.
With Tubi is more, it's AVOD, advertising,
right.
Video on demand. So it's free to the subscribers or anybody to watch. You don't have to pay a fee.
Right.
But you're watching commercials or ads when you're
right.
watching the program. And so for the producer, you want people to watch your movie, because businesses have a marketing team that are advertising,
right.
that's running commercials within your movie, or paying Tubi to pay those.
Got it. Okay.
Paying to run their commercials in their movie. So their content in your movie, so you get a fee for that. Of course, it's split between you and Tubi and the director. I mean, the distributor, if you want to be clear about it. But the more people that watch your film, the more commercials that's going to be ran in your film, and that's the better, because then there is impressions. So you get paid off impressions.
Interesting. Okay, and so you said the AVOD, the advertising video on demand, and that's another thing about for filmmakers sort of learning the world of distribution, how many different categories there are. And AVOD is an interesting one, because it's a revenue split, right, based on the advertisers. And if you have more impressions, you basically, it costs the advertisers more to be on your film, but they're willing to do it because more people are coming and seeing their commercials, right?
Right. And so, and it's popularity of film. If your film is popular, because they're looking at everything. They're looking at how popular, how often somebody watches your content, and so that's basically how that one works. And of course, you have the other platforms, which Netflix was subscription based,
right?
And Amazon Prime, so to speak, that's subscription based, and that doesn't work. That's more like if you want to rent or buy them.
Right.
And
yeah, I noticed.
But there are no commercials.
Right, and so people have the option. They can watch it on Tubi and then for free, but then you are watching some commercials, or you can rent it for $3.99 or $4.99 on Amazon, and then you watch it without commercials. So when you are doing when you're trying to drive people to Tubi, did you have a process that you went through, like with daily social media posts? Did you use TikTok or Instagram or Twitter? How did you do that? Tell us through about that.
All of it. Because now here's this world that you like a fish out of water, because in the distribution deal today for indie filmmakers, if it's a deal, the distributor's not going to do the marketing for you. That's
right. Okay. All right.
If they do, then the percentage will be different. But from my research, it was told that don't trust the distributor to do the marketing for you because they're not. And that's how a lot of filmmakers were, I guess, getting played out of their money
Sure.
because they signed the deal. The distributor said they were going to do marketing, and they just did one Facebook post. And
Right.
so, and we was not marketing, but they charged all this money. And so when it's time to recoup the money, they recoup their marketing fees first. So a good distributor now will let you know up front, marketing is totally the responsibility of the producer. So now I have to do this marketing, and it's like, okay, what marketing strategy do I utilize? A good thing, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. Right. And so it's like,
Did you set up an account, like a film account, like Unresolved had its own account on each of these platforms, or was it all you personally, or a little both?
Yeah, both. So I got my own account on these platforms, and I got an Unresolved account. Facebook, Instagram, mainly, because the majority of the people are there.
Okay.
TikTok works a little differently, and as you diving in this, you will start up to realize, and TikTok is more expensive. But these platforms, Facebook, these social media platforms, is pay to play, because you can have 5,000 followers, but you make a post, your post is not going to 5,000 followers. Right. It might initially go to 90 of them, and then if people like it, comment on it, then it will go to 150, 200, and whatnot. But it's not going to all 5,000.
Right.
So
you got to keep, and you have to keep, like, it's your daily job, right? You got to do your posts. You got to come up with something so it's not the same thing over and over again, right? And then you've got if people comment, you got to interact with those comments. It's a challenge. I know. I do it sometimes well, and sometimes I'm horrible at it. So I get it. It's not easy.
Yeah, because you see other people that create content, and they have tens of thousands of followers, thousands of followers, and I'm just kind of like, how they get these numbers? And you're looking at their content, see how they create it and whatnot, and it's just like it leaves you scratching your head, and it's like, and then if we talking about movie, using social media to promote your movie. It's a pay to play.
Right. So did you sometimes have to pay to boost your posts and things like that, or allow ads on your social media platform? How I guess it's a little bit different for each platform.
It's pay to play. If you want reach, you got to pay for reach.
Right.
And so, like I said, that's where it comes in. If you got that Brent uncle, or you got Hollywood backing you up,
right?
Then the filmmaker doesn't have money, because you finish making the film,
right?
And so now the art side is done. You dive into the business side, and I learned late in the game you needed a marketing budget, so I got to come up with more money to market.
Right.
The film. When it was in the theaters, I had to market it on social media to drive people to the theaters.
Sure.
Now it's on streaming. Even now, I'm spending money marketing it on these different social media platforms. TikTok is very expensive to market on. So, that's like $50 a day, no less than $50 a day to market on TikTok. Instagram and Facebook, they don't have any limitations on the budget, so you can pretty much, but if you want reach, you got to pay for that reach.
Right.
And then you have to pay over a long term. So it works differently when your movie's on Tubi. It works differently. There's no versus Hollywood, when they have a movie release and when they have a movie coming up, they have the marketing budget to drop everything in the first several weeks.
Right.
And push it.
Right.
Any filmmakers, we don't have that luxury, So the marketing has to be spread out over months and months and months. And so you create your content and you put it out there, but then there's one thing that you pay to push it all out. Then you have to learn attention spans. Who's going to watch a 2-minute trailer?
Right.
In this day and age, nobody watches 2-minute videos unless you Will Smith.
Right.
Or some celebrity.
Right.
Nobody's going to watch it. So you have to cut it down. So right now I'm running 10-second
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because if you look at the analytics, the viewership goes down after 10 seconds.
Yeah. 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 That's the time it takes for you to just pause while you're scrolling. You haven't clicked on it yet, but your eyes stopped, the thumb stopped scrolling down. You now watched a little bit. You get 10, 15 seconds, and then maybe that's it. But you're right. So you got to be able to capture their interest in that short period of time to where they'll click through and get more info.
Yeah, because it's trial and error. Because first I put that 2-minute trailer out there, and you look at the analytics, want nobody watching. After 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds, it goes down. But that's Instagram and that's Facebook. TikTok is a totally different thing. TikTok is longer form content. TikTok is more younger audience. So now you gotta curate your whatever content you create for the different platforms.
Right.
So what you may run on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook may be different from the type of trailer you put on TikTok.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because obviously there are businesses and creative teams that all they do is manage social media marketing for brands, for people, for projects or whatever, but they cost money, and they should, right? If they know what they're doing and they're staying current with how the algorithms are working or where the trends are or how the revenue share agreements are changing. But again, back to your point about being the independent filmmaker, if you don't have that budget to pay them, it's one of the things you got to learn, right? It's part of your process. Do you have any idea? Like, do you spend typically a certain amount every single day that you're doing that, or how has that worked?
Let's put it this way: hundreds to thousands of dollars a month.
Okay,
trying to advertise.
Got it.
And that's just a fraction of the population.
Right. That's
a fraction of the population. So this where it comes where this is the business side of filmmaking. This is where it's important to have somebody well known in your film.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I was doing film, but these certain business things I didn't know about. All I knew was I could make a film.
Right.
But the business side of it, I didn't know. Now I know. And now I understand why, because that's leverage. That's leverage. And so you have who in your film? Oh, cool. If they well known, yeah. And so 2 influencers. Influencers too will help boost your ratings, your algorithms, and your viewership. And so, but if all you have was a good story and good quality, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of grassroots. It's a lot of leg work. It's a lot of money and time involved in promoting your project to create awareness. Because just because it's on Tubi don't mean they're gonna watch.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I when I'm searching for something to watch, something new. At the end of the day, and I'm scrolling through, and I think to myself, okay, I pay for these different channels, and I've got all this stuff in streaming, and it's all there, but I can't. How come I can't find anything? Because what's getting shown to me as my choices is a tiny fraction. If I don't know how to search, if I don't know how to dig down, I may never even get presented an opportunity to watch a film like Unresolved or something like that, unless I've already sort of self-selected into a certain area. So if I had seen it though on social media and made a note of it, okay, wait a second, now what's that movie I saw? Oh, all right, now I'm going to go find it. So I guess you're right. You gotta drive those eyeballs.
Yeah, gotta drive the eyeballs because if you don't promote, nobody's gonna watch it.
Right,
and that's when it comes down to. So it's a lot, like I said, it's a lot of lead work and it's a lot of research, finding out what works, what doesn't work.
Right.
When you get the momentum, go with that flow. And when it's over, we got to switch up because, like I said, this is the 7th month that I'm in and advertising and promoting that it's out there. And so I had to constantly remind myself, this is not a Hollywood film. This is the indie. This is how we have to operate in the indie.
Right. I
And
hear
it's
you.
other filmmakers, when you network with other filmmakers that has their content up there and it's doing well, they will share, their secrets of the trade and how to continue to get people to watch
Right.
because how to switch it up. So it's a different game. It's a different, and the independent is a different beast.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. So, you've talked about a couple things about obviously with Unresolved and some of the things that you learned. So, what's next for you? Do you have a new project that you're working on, or where you're going to get that budget up front, or you're going to get that marketing money? What's next on your agenda?
Oh yeah, well, I want to start writing because right now it's promotions, filmmaking. I think the last step in the whole filmmaking process is the marketing and promotion and getting people to watch because it's out there. And so I would like to step off and start writing, and that's my goal in the next several months because I want to go into production again,
Got it.
and then go into production with this newfound knowledge now.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think in that so that next time the things that you've learned this time, when you go into writing, because I've heard other filmmakers talk about how the process of okay, I got an idea. This is the movie I want to make. Here's the story. There's the world I want to create, et cetera, et cetera, and then you do it all, right? But you don't really know if there's actually going to be an audience for that film until you've made it and you put it out there. But I've heard from other filmmakers that have maybe gone that route, and then with the next project they do a little more research up front, like what might a distribution be for if I had a script like this. One of the terms that comes up a lot is people talk about, horror movies. There's a built-in audience for horror films. And so if I have horror as a genre or whatever it might be, then I kind of know where my distribution's likely to be or kind of my budget, and then I work around that. Do you think you would start taking into consideration the whole distribution model at the early creative rate? Like would you have made a different movie, for example, if you knew about the distribution? Maybe that's a better way to ask it.
No. I create my stories. I think Quentin Tarantino said this. I create my stories for me and everybody else just along for the ride.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense. I hear that.
I want to tell my story, but it's also with that, and that's the art side. But then
Sure.
not knowing this, the business side, you have to know your audience. And so
Yeah.
one piece of advice I got was to create your brand. And so when you create your brand, everybody will follow you. So regardless of what movie you do, Bruce did this movie. Okay, all right. Bruce doing another movie. Okay, I'm gonna watch that one.
Yeah.
Create that brand, and then be personally when it comes to writing a script and then thinking about distribution, which you should do. Think about
Sure.
distribution beforehand, but should that be impact on your script? I say yes and no because you might need celebrity from a business standpoint to
Right.
give your film that boost. One of these roles or two of these roles have to be played by somebody well known.
Right.
And so that's one thing. Two, you got distribution. Distributors need content.
Yeah.
They're not staying in business.
Yeah.
So if you have somebody that's in your film that's well known, got a good script, got good quality, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They depending on the distributor, a lot of them differently, and I think advice is depending on the film you make, choose a distributor that's well known in that
in that area, right?
Help you push it in that area.
Right.
That might be some good advice. For my type of film and my audience, there's a platform for it.
Yeah.
So
and like you said, you got to make your movie, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you were going to put it out as your work. You got to believe it. You got to stand by it. You got to, as you said, do it for myself. That's you probably can never change that about it, right? That's your core basic way you do it. Well, first of all, Bruce, let me say thanks so much for taking some time to visit today. This is very cool. I'm always trying to learn more about the business pieces that I don't know that much yet. And I know what the contracts look like, right? And I've been doing that work for a long time. But this next, place for the producer to find, the way to get the film on screen, I think is really fascinating. So thanks for taking some time. I want to ask you one more question, and I do this all the time with guests here. And I'm just going to ask you, like, what's on your screen when you're ready to look at other work? Whether it's your phone or on the wall or in a theater or whatever. What's on your screen? What are you watching right now?
Game of Thrones.
All right. Are you watching the original one or you watch the House of Dragon?
House of Dragon, the season's done. So
right.
Game of Thrones.
All right. So I just finished House of Dragons. What'd you think? I sort of was like waiting for the war to start, and I feel like, a little bit of the people that are saying the whole season 2 was really just the prequel for season 3. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, yes and no. Episode 4 in season 2 was like, the last season they could have at least gave us a fight scene.
Right.
Yeah, they at least gave us a fight scene. But I think they got the audience hooked.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's true. Yeah, and I have one of my daughters lives out of town, and she's a big fan. So I stayed current with it this season because she needed to be able to talk to me about it on Monday or Tuesday. And if I hadn't watched it on Sunday, I was in trouble. I was going to hear about it all week long until I had watched it so we could stay current. But I think it does that. In a good show like that draws you in. That's very cool.
But that's an example of a show that, I just did researched the numbers. Game of Thrones was 15 million per episode.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to ask you, so do you have any dragons? You don't have any dragons in your budget for your next film?
No. I would like.
Well, that's something we can like root for. And whenever you get to the point where you've got dragons in your movie, I want you to come back and tell us about the process of working with dragons. That'd be very cool.
Will do.
All right. Hey, Bruce, thanks a ton for being on here. So people can watch Unresolved now on Tubi, right? If they want to watch with commercials, it's free. They can also watch it on Amazon Prime Video, right? So if they've got their Fire Stick or they just watch on their laptop or their phone, and the movie is Unresolved. And there's a hyphen after the correct?
Yeah, Resolved.
Resolved. Okay, cool. All right. Well, everybody go check out Unresolved. Bruce Carlton Cunningham Jr., writer, director, producer, actor, star, impresario of that film, and many more. It's been a pleasure. Folks, if you've enjoyed this episode, find us and follow us wherever you get your audio podcasts. We're on all of the platforms. And you can also watch us on YouTube. And if you're on the YouTube channel watching us now, hit that like and subscribe button. Go check out Unresolved. Follow all of Bruce's and Unresolved's accounts on the various social media platforms. And you can always find us at thescreenlawyer.com. And you'll get lots of great content there. Bruce, thanks again for joining us. Hope to catch up soon.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Take care.